What's good, everybody? Believe in Kentucky. Cole Park from the Cats Pose. His name is Vinny Hardy, and it's just that whirlwind kind of thing, Cole. Man, look, I did a little quick one after we just talked before we recorded. I crashed out before the Sunday night football game got good, so I was dozing when the Stoops news hit. Uh, did a little quick episode to get something out here about Stoops being fired earlier today. So now I got you on here with your insights for the Cats Pause. The Louisville game has to feel like it was 10 years ago. And the North Carolina game tomorrow, that was so huge, kind of seems like it's getting overshadowed because, some bigger fish have invaded the pond right now.
Yeah, I mean, first things first. Shout out Marcus Mariota, the big 2025. Marcus Mariota still slinging the football. Almost got it, but the Broncos shook their overtime curse, got it done. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. My team plays tonight. That's what matters. Playing against
Oh,
an eliminated New York Giants team. So how's that,
two,
Aaron Gershon?
two and
Anyway,
10 versus 10 and 2. All right.
hate to see it. Glad it's not us on this side of it this time. Anyway, yes, a lot of moving pieces the last 48 hours. Feels like the Louisville game was a lifetime ago. I mean, we talking to the players, the coaches post game, we head back, and then a whole lot of what's going to happen, what's going on. Nothing really that night, nothing concrete anyway. And then move into Sunday, and it happens. Mark Stoops is officially, after 13 years, out as the head coach of Kentucky football. Winningest all-time coach in program history. Once took the Cats to a streak of 8 straight bowl games, 2 10-win seasons, regardless of what the record reflects now, with NCAA vacating the 2021 season. Numerous players put into the NFL, and overall just a building of a legitimate football program here in Lexington. Kind of started a trend downhill after that second 10-win season with a couple 7-5s. Then you obviously go 4-8 last season. Seemed like you could have got back to bowl eligibility this year, 5-6 going into the last 2 games, just absolutely smoked by Vanderbilt and Nashville, and then Louisville 41-0. A lot of people were calling out the similarities in that game and Joker Phillips 40-0 against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
You can't lose that way. And at the end of the day, after some going back and forth, after some will they, won't they, Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart is in the market for a football coach once again. Stoops will leave Kentucky as the longest tenured coach in the SEC. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure who that goes to now. There have been a lot of changes the last few years.
Well, I guess
But
it'd be Kirby if I had to
yeah,
guess.
surely it's got to be.
Mhm.
Um, but regardless, it is not Mark Stoops anymore. And now we await player decisions, coaching decisions. There's a lot of smoke out there as to BBN's classic plane tracking that they love to do. Message boards going crazy and all kinds of stuff. But that's where we're at right now. The last 48 hours saw the 41-0 loss to Louisville. Mark Stoops ending his legendary Hall of Fame surely career at Kentucky. Um, One of the all-time greats in Kentucky athletics history, the winningest football coach of all time, passing Bear Bryant before he went on to Alabama, where he made his real claim to fame. And yeah, there is also a ranked basketball game tomorrow. Actually, 2 ranked basketball games this week, I believe, because I think Gonzaga is still ranked despite losing by like 40 to Michigan or whatever it was. Um, Tomorrow, Cats will face North Carolina, based on what I'm hearing and what others have been hearing that I've seen. Um, it seems like Kentucky's going to go into that one without Jalen Lowe and Mohamed Diabate again. Seems like Diabate is not practicing still with the Cats. That's not the greatest sign, but this is a chance for Kentucky. It's a really big one for Kentucky basketball too. I mean, after the first 2 ranked contests of the season against Michigan State and Louisville went quite poorly, we'll say, particularly the New York City contest against Madison Square Garden where Diabate got injured in the first
Yeah,
place. Um, this is a big one that the Cats need to get. Could either be one of the best weeks for Kentucky basketball or one of the worst, depending on how that goes. But like you said, it kind of feels a little insignificant right now because we're dealing with, for the first time in over a decade, a football coaching search. Some fantastic players that are going to have some big decisions to be made. Signing day, National Signing Day on Wednesday.
yeah,
Um, you know, it's interesting landscape right now at Kentucky.
definitely is. We're live on the Believe Network. to streaming. So feel free to jump in if you got comments or questions. Appreciate you interacting. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell your news hits and everything. All kinds of stuff going on. Oh, so right now, is it Stein? Is it Heartline? Who do we? Those are the two that kind of separate themselves. If you had to, and some, Dan Mullen is lurking for some, but uh, you saw Justin Rowland tweet out they want to have a coach in 24, 36 hours. Who do you think that will be if it plays out like that?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, one of the biggest factors that you are concerned with hiring a coach now is that National Signing Day. You've got that coming on Wednesday. Kentucky's got a pretty good, I won't say pretty good, but they've got some players they really want to keep on that list. So making a new head coaching decision will be kind of pivotal in getting that going as quickly as possible. I will say, out of the two front runners, Stein and Hartline, you have a similar issue when it comes to the transfer portal, in that both coaches are offensive coordinators on teams that are expected to make deep runs into the college football playoffs, at the very least make the college football playoffs. That would keep them busy into January. If either of those coaches were to make the national title game, I believe that'll be January 19th. I think the portal opens on the 1st. So that's a bit worrying in that regard, but I will say that there's some other names on there. I would say I would, in my opinion, eliminate Dan Mullen. I don't think that there's a ton of smoke in that direction. The two big ones, there are some other names that are involved, but the two big ones that we're all looking at right now are certainly Will Stein, the offensive coordinator with the Oregon Ducks, and Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator with the Ohio State Buckeyes, the reigning national champions. Hartline obviously has the connection with his brother being a former Kentucky quarterback, being on staff at Kentucky. I believe his contract is expiring, but he's still currently with the Kentucky football program. On top of that, you have Stein, who, played quarterback for Louisville, but is from Lexington. He played at Trinity, or not from Lexington. He's from Kentucky. He played football for Trinity High School in Louisville.
Yeah.
And his family is Kentucky fans. I believe his dad has season tickets to the program. He's grown up around Kentucky for a lot of his life. So there's a lot of smoke for both. If you wanted my personal opinion, I would still expect the hire to be Stein. A Heartline hiring would not shock me. If it got beyond those two, I would be shocked a little bit. But my pick, if you wanted me to place a bet right now, I would pick Stein. I don't know for sure that's who it's going to be. There's still a lot of smoke for Heartline. There's still some smoke for some other names that I don't necessarily expect the search to get to, but that's where I would go. That's what my personal opinion is. Regardless, I'm a sports journalist, so I've got stories pre-written for both of them, just in case. And then that, regardless, turns a lot more attention towards, okay, well, now what is the team going to look like? Who are the players that they're going to retain? Who's going to leave? There's a few players that, I've already had that I expected to transfer before Stoops was fired. A few players that I knew of that were going to transfer before. Will they still do so depending on who the next head coach is? Players that were going to stay before, are they still going to do so with a new head coach? What about transfers? What about flips? If you're getting a guy from another program, what about his commitments there? Is he going to flip those guys? And then you also have to look at other coaches as well. I mean, you're coming into a situation where Kentucky only has 3 coaches on deals that don't expire this offseason. That is, of course, Bush Hamdan, the offensive coordinator. If we're calling a spade, I would expect Bush Hamdan to also be bought out of his contract, whoever the new head coach is. I do not expect them to retain Bush as the offensive coordinator with a new coach. Wide receivers coach LaDamian Washington, don't know. That would be a big one to retain. He's very good at what he does, but again, not sure. You usually expect kind of a clean slate type deal where a new coach comes in. And then you have offensive lineman coach Eric Wolford, who, interestingly, Kentucky got its JUCO offensive lineman commitment today. Wolford allegedly told that player that Kentucky will honor his commitment even with Stoops gone. So you have a player committing to a team that doesn't currently have a coach today.
Wow.
But regardless, there's a lot of intrigue and interest into, who's going to fill up the rest of the coaching ranks. If you want my personal opinion again, do not expect Brad White to return as the defensive coordinator. Obviously, his contract is up this offseason regardless, but in my opinion, I do not expect whoever comes in to take over Kentucky would retain him. Personally, to me, I didn't really expect White to return regardless of if Stoops did or not. I think that,
Mm.
without getting too into the weeds about specifics and trying to, leak information, I think there's one real job in particular that you have to look out for with Brad White in terms of what he might take. I would expect him to take that job. I would expect it not to be in Kentucky, but maybe still in the SEC. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, you said, as far as what you said with Bush, the top targets coming in are offensive guys. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have their philosophy. They're going to have their guy pegged for OC. They're going to have their hand in the offense to however much of a degree they want. On the flip side, for White, if he stays in the league, he still could possibly be working for another defensive minded coach if we're on the same wavelength.
It's, I believe we probably are.
Okay.
That one's been rumored and allegedly leaked to death. It makes the most sense. It's still what I'm expecting to happen. Regardless, I don't hate it either. I want to put that out there. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration that Kentucky made this decision when it did and missed out on Summerall. I would also add that I'm not John Summerall. I don't know what he would have done, but
Mm-hmm.
there's not a guarantee he takes the Kentucky job regardless if Florida's still open the way it has been. Um, so it might have worked out the way it was supposed to in that regard. But regardless, with Stoops, his tenure coming to an end, I think this is probably the best thing for Kentucky. You had Stoops coming in, former DC at Florida State, Joker Phillips before that, Rich Brooks before that. I mean, it's really been since I would say Hal Mumme probably that Kentucky had truly an offensive oriented coach. So feels right to give it a shot with an offensive minded coach as opposed to a defensive minded coach. At the very least, it'll be entertaining.
Yeah.
But I think that I think this could be good. I think, in my opinion, either Stein or Hartline, I'm excited to see what either of them could do. Um, Again, my opinion is still that it doesn't really get beyond those two, though there are other names in the running as well. Those are not the only two names by any stretch. I just expect it to be one of those two names. Um, I like the potential that both have. Um, there's a lot of to be excited about with both. There's downsides to both. Right now, it's just a matter of who can Kentucky get. Obviously, if you go with the Heartline route, he's obviously very very good at what he does. Was the offensive coordinator for a national champion last year.
Mm-hmm.
Knows this area well. Is a phenomenal recruiter. Helped, he was a wide receivers coach, former wide receiver as well. He helped mentor some phenomenal NFL wide receivers in his time at Ohio State. As for Stein, obviously more of the quarterback kind of guy. That could be really good if you're leaning on bringing back Cutter Boley,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in his development. Obviously, Stein played quarterback at Louisville, maybe not as familiar in recruiting this area as much. He got a lot of his rise in Texas and then to Oregon, but is familiar with this area, played football in Kentucky. So I would expect him to be able to kind of get that going. And offensive minded coach, done some really, really great stuff with Oregon as well. I mean, the Ducks, regardless of if they have a national title, not like Ohio State does, the Ducks
Yeah.
were a phenomenal team last year, ranked very highly. They arguably seemed like the national championship favorite before kind of collapsing in the second round with the bye. Led to a lot of discussion about restructuring how the playoffs are seeded and how the byes work. But I think either of them have a lot of potential, a lot of upsides, and some downsides as well. But it's really going to be interesting to see which way Kentucky goes with this.
And they both seem like really good options, seem like solid options. They're young guys, they're offensive guys, and to your point, you kind of probably need to have somebody on the offensive side of the ball just for the aesthetics, and you hope you get wins and losses you get more wins than losses with that. But just to look and be entertained, like you said, to have a little more excitement on the field. And look, we enjoyed the 10-win seasons. We enjoyed Mark Stoops physicaling his way to becoming Kentucky's all-time winningest coach. Um, he played it close to the vest. You know that we said it on here. That 10-3 win at Auburn. That is Mark Stoops as you can get. That's his dream kind of game. So it was going to look different going forward, no matter which way they go. If it is Hartline, if it is Stein, I'm kind of with Eddie, who just put the comment up. He was leaning Hartline just because you're a little more familiar. I remember when Mike played here. He was underrated. He was a very solid quarterback. Good junior year. Was on his way to a really good senior year. Look, you know the history of Kentucky, and gets hurt. Everybody in the building can remember when they beat South Carolina and Steve Spurrier, and they had Lattimore and all those in-state studs that South Carolina had, and they were down 28-10. They come back and rally and win, things like that. So, that makes me want to lean Heartline just because the family connection. Mike's already here. Brian does have a good reputation. Buckeye Nation is fond of him, just like the Ducks are fond of Stein. So Kentucky seems to be, if you handle business with one of these guys and don't fumble and have to go to option 3, 4, 5, should be in a pretty good spot. So it's just up to them which way they want to go. I'm going to go back to Summerall for just a second because is it some of the Florida fans maybe not enamored with him? Is he kind of getting a little bit of some meh from Gainesville?
Well, I think that let me see how I want to say this.
Because I got
Um,
thoughts. After you say what you got to say, I got thoughts. So
on one hand, I would say that they're giving less um goodwill to Summerall early on, particularly after what happened with Billy Napier. Not that I think those coaches are comparable if you
yeah,
actually look at them, but if you're more of a casual fan, all you see is really promising group of five coach. We hired him as our next head coach. Not really proven at the SEC level. I think that there's so many differences in terms of Summerall and Napier and the trajectory and hiring a general manager that they're non it's a non-factor to worry about that, but I think that that does play a role. Um, we talk all the time on this show, and there's a lot of people who tune into this show, but we forget that for the most part, every single sports team, the average fan is a casual. They're not, super locked in on all these things the way, some of us are, that it's our job. So they don't really know a lot of the history and the specifics of Summerall and his rise. I would also say, uh, how do I want to go about that? I would say there was some unrealistic expectations around Florida as to who they were going to get in this cycle. I think that in some ways you have the pot calling the kettle black with Kentucky fans, how they handle the last basketball opening. There is in the modern era of college sports, sometimes there are unrealistic expectations for who is going to take a job. And I think Florida fans might have been a bit susceptible to that. Doesn't help that you were all in on the Lane Kiffin train until Lane Kiffin goes to LSU in that messy, messy situation.
mm,
Left the dog, man. Hate to see it. But anyway, on top, so you had that factor. And then, I'm sure if you are a more casual fan going from Kiffin on the verge of making the college football playoffs with Ole Miss to Summerall, who is also on the verge of making the college football playoffs, but is at Tulane getting the group of five bid. There is a step down if you're not as familiar with that. Personally, I would rather have Summerall be my head coach than Lane Kiffin, but that's purely from a reporter standpoint and doing my job. Um, but I think there's a lot of factors that went into that. I do think that it is a bit surprising to me that some Florida fans are as negative as they have been regarding that hiring. Because I personally, especially with the general manager, I think Summerall's a home run hire. I think that he's going to do really, really good things, and I believe that he was going to do good things regardless of where he went at the Power Five level. When he was even at Troy, I felt it was a matter of when, not if, he made it to this level. And that was even before he got to Tulane and has this team on the verge of making the college football playoffs. So, um, Florida fans lighten up a little bit. I think that's going to be a good hire for you for a while to come. And that's someone who I liked Billy Napier at Louisiana. When the hire was made, I said, I wasn't even a reporter at the time, but I said, I don't know about that one. So this is not someone who's just all on board with G5 coaches. There are specific coaches that I am all in on, and there are some that I'm less all in on. I was skeptical about Napier. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I'm not skeptical of Summerall. I think that one's going to be a very good hire for Florida.
Yeah. So Napier was kind of, kind of Dooley esque for them, guy trying to step up from that level, and it didn't work out. Summerall, too, and well, Russ Dellinger just tweets out that Kentucky is trying to finalize a deal with Stein, just like you said.
Pete Thamel just puts out Oregon OC
Yeah.
Will Stein as a target to be the next head coach of Kentucky, with the sides working toward a deal.
So you were like you said, one of the two options look like it's going to be Stein. That's cool. Go Summerall though. If Stoops had gone to Texas A&M, would Summerall have taken the job then? If a move had been made after the 4-8 season and you pursue Summerall, would he have taken the job
In
then?
both cases, I say probably yes.
And now his come up has just continued to grow, and he's on the radar for all these bigger schools. Kentucky's his alma mater, but let's be real, all these schools are more high profile, better jobs than Kentucky. And look, he's just such a hot commodity and has been. And the trajectory, like you said, he's continued to win everywhere he's gone. Troy, Tulane, and the details, the differences between him and Billy Napier. I want to say this though. Call me crazy. If the fans get over it, they lighten up down there in Gainesville. Maybe Summerall goes down there and is Steve Spurrier 2.0 and stays for 20 years and is beating us 73-7 like Spurrier used to. Maybe that happens and it's a home run and it's a fit and he's there for the next decade and a half or 2 decades or till he wants to leave and have sections of town named after him or whatever. I also know that, stuff changes quickly. People move, guys relocate. You go back to the old days. Bill Curry was at his alma mater at Alabama. Next thing you know, he's at Kentucky. He didn't beat Auburn enough. We get it. You got to beat Auburn down in Tuscaloosa. He didn't go as well at Kentucky as you would have thought. If that Peach Bowl goes differently and you beat Clemson, I wonder what if it goes differently for him. But I'm just saying, barring a heinous scandal or something that you can't come back from, or maybe you just lose to a terrible degree, maybe Summerall is available again. And like Vince Marrow did with Wandell and those guys, you keep the relationship and maybe it works out for you later. Before Stein, I know I'm rambling. Before Stein and Hartline, we also had a retread Dan Mullen in the mix. I think Kentucky fans would still welcome a retread John Summerall, depending on how his tenure went in Gainesville. If it doesn't work, if whatever happens now doesn't work out, they're still going to be probably infatuated with him down the road. I'm just saying the ship hasn't permanently just sailed away on him. Call me crazy, but we just never know.
I would agree with that. Yeah. There's always the potential for the future. I think one thing I want to say on the matter is Florida has the right idea with what they're doing after the failure with Billy Napier. And I think it's not a bad idea that Kentucky shouldn't look at. And there's reports that maybe they are. Hire a general manager. At that point, if you hire a general manager, who your head coach is matters less. Simply put, it makes the job
Mm-hmm.
easier. It makes the job more consistent regardless of who's sitting in that chair. Um, and I think that's something Kentucky should do. There's some reports that they're potentially looking into it. I think that's a great idea. And I think Florida has the right idea hiring a general manager for Summerall, especially with how it worked against Billy Napier. Um, just more continuity within your program, more reliability in terms of people doing what they need to be doing. And if you are in a situation where your coach leaves or has to be fired or it's not working out, the program is going to suffer less.
Yeah.
So I think that is the future of this sport. You're seeing it in basketball as well. North Carolina decided not to fire Hubert Davis. They decided to get him a general manager instead. They might
Hmm.
still end up firing Hubert Davis in a few years, but regardless, they're trying out a GM before they make that decision. I think that as we go along, as college sports move closer and closer to pro sports and the way they're handled, and NIL and the transfer portal, and it kind of feels like free agency every single year with one year-to-year basis contracts. It's the way to go. It's the only way to go, and teams that fail to adapt to that are going to get left behind, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We've seen
And
Kentucky. We've seen Kentucky fall behind before in these changes. Let's let's not fall behind on this one.
exactly. And as it's been brought out many different times before. Champ Kelly played at Kentucky. He's a general manager right now, interim general manager in the NFL. If you want to bring a guy in, you got a guy that's kind of already doing that job. You Woj went from being Woj to being the GM for St.
St.
Bonaventure.
Bonaventure.
So, Champ Kelly is there. I mean, maybe he's been contacted, maybe he hasn't. We shall see. On three saying Kentucky is hiring Will Stein per Chris Lowe and Pete Nakos. So looking like Stein it is. So you
Yeah,
were
not shocked by that at all. That's who I expected it to be. That's what I had my money on. I would have been happy with Hartline. I think that would have been a good hire. I wrote something up just in case, but everything I'd been hearing today was that Stein was the guy, and if it went beyond that, it's because Stein said no.
mm-hmm. So I mean, you got youth, dude's 36 years old. Uh, invigorating, shot in the arm, offense from the state, knows the state. So checking all those boxes. Um, let's just have a consistent defensive coordinator that works. Let's not shuffle in DCs every other year. That'd just be maybe a basic request from the fan base. If you can just get a good solid DC, have some continuity, and let's go. Let's see what we got. Young fella in the SEC. Let's see what we got.
I also want to just fire back on something too. It really bothered me when Kentucky made the decision to fire Mark Stoops. Even before the decision was made, when that conversation was going on, there was a lot of talk of, well, who are you going to get? Who's going to be better than Mark Stoops? Who are you going to get? Even when the decision was made, there were people saying, it's Kentucky. Who are you going to get? Kentucky filled faster than other jobs did.
Preach. I was thinking
Kentucky put two guys they wanted on their target board. They got their top target, and it closed faster than other jobs did. So
I'm with you. And I
throwing it
was
out there.
thinking that. I was thinking that earlier. I'm like, that's always objection number one. Well, who you gonna get? Who you gonna get? That was the question when the program was in a lot worse shape at the end of the Joker era. Who you gonna get? You're always gonna get somebody. Somebody is gonna take the job. Is it gonna be a fit? Is it gonna work? Maybe not. But somebody's gonna step up and be willing
Well,
to,
that was
to
my
take the
what you
job.
just said fired me up a little bit too because I felt strong because when everyone says who are you going to get that's better than Mark Stoops, it is entirely possible the person you hired next is not going to be better than Mark Stoops. You don't fire a coach because necessarily because you think you're going to get someone better. You fire a coach because you decide this is not working. This, what we are doing right now, is trending the wrong direction. Whether or not the next hire is successful or not, that doesn't really change the fact that you have decided the previous administration was not going to succeed. It was not going to work. So to the point, I would say, well, who are you going to get? It doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The point was this isn't working. The point is this is failing. It's not going to get better. We need to make a change. Now, it is important to make a big hire to get someone who you think will succeed, and I think Stein can do that. But the point of, well, who are you going to get always frustrated me, because that to me fundamentally misunderstood why the change needed to be made. The
Yeah.
change didn't need to be made necessarily because there's a top candidate out there just ready to take the job. The change needed to be made because it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Whether or not you get someone better or not does not change the fact that Kentucky fans and apparently administration believed, regardless of who it isn't going to work under Stoops. So we need to do something different.
Now, can you keep failing and run it into the ground and
Yes, you can.
affect the caliber of some of those candidates?
Absolutely.
Yes. But
Absolutely.
will somebody still take the job? Also, yes. So,
And I mean,
you know,
it's always been. I mean, Mark Stoops was a defensive coordinator at Florida State. He had never been a head coach at the collegiate level before.
and I was impressed by it. I was like, I was like, oh, we get Florida State defensive coordinator.
Yeah, exactly. You take that, you
Yes,
take that.
yes. I'll never forget it. The moment I heard his name, I was like, oh, cool. We got Florida State DC. Wow. Because that's a name. And but he was just coming off of a national championship, with Jimbo and Florida State's the high profiles of blue blood. And I'm like, wow, their DC wants to come coach Kentucky. Cool. So yeah. So I'm glad we hit on that, man. Because we both
Yeah.
was sitting there thinking the same thing. And it's
Let's
just this
get this
moment allows
story
things.
thrown up really quickly so the cat's paws can be on this. But I had the story ready to go, so I just need to copy paste it onto here. But be able
Is the
to.
Cat's Paws Twitter still the same? I've been trying to find it. Is something up with it? Is it the Cat's Paws 24/7? It's not that anymore, or
We don't talk
I'm
about
not.
the cat's paws Twitter. It's a sore subject. It's a sore subject. It is in purgatory at the moment.
I was
Um,
I kept I was like, dude, what happened? I didn't mean to bring up. I should have asked you off air. My bad. I
no, no,
apologize
you're good. I'm just
to
teasing you. It's
you
not.
and
It's
and
not
Daryl
that.
Bird and everybody. My bad. But
No, no, no. You're completely fine. I was just teasing you a little bit, but no. We are currently in Twitter purgatory right now.
okay, because I was like, is it just me? Because I'm like search. Because sometimes I'll tag the Cat's Paws in there. They were kind enough to follow me, even though I'm nobody. But I'm like, oh, the Cat Paws follow me, whatever. But I would try to look, or so that explains that. So you succinctly, okay, all right. So you got stories on the coaching hire. You're gonna be at the game tomorrow. What else can we see from Cole Park in this busy time? Because back in August, you were like, gosh, I wish there was something going on, and now here
I
we
take
are.
it all back. I take it all back immediately. Oh my God, do I take it back? I surprised you can't see the bags under my eyes with this light on right here. I slept on the couch last night, like fell asleep with my phone in my hand.
Oh man,
It one of those
yeah.
kind of nights, and
You've been grinding, man. Been
woke up this
grinding.
morning and immediately checked my phone for more. It's been going on, but in the immediate future, we'll have some stuff coming up with this new hiring. It seems like it will be Stein, getting that put out now. We'll have some stuff covering that, his track record, get to know him. On top of that, we'll have stuff continuing coverage with player decisions, who's staying, who's going, who's new. We'll have signing day coming up on Wednesday, which is sure to have some stories coming out from our boy Josh over here at the Cat's Paws. And we'll also have, believe it or not, there's still a basketball season going on.
Yeah.
So we'll have some of that going tomorrow, some stories there. And I will do my best to not completely crumble doing all of this at once.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we got the hire as we were talking about who's next. So it's officially Will Stein. So all that official welcoming and um, presser and all that kind of stuff is they're going to follow when they get that all lined out. Um, we'll talk cats and heels and all that at some point. I'm going to have an episode tomorrow with Lashard Binkley. He's from the Rocket Fuel podcast on the Believe Network. Covers the Houston Rockets. We're just going to talk a little Reed Shepherd because that was my pick. I'm biased as a Kentucky fan and a Rockets fan, but Reed was my pick for most improved player of the year, and he's doing his best to lock that up or be in the running for that with his play with Houston. So
I will say just a quick comment. Garrett Witherington switched from Kentucky to Virginia Tech. My best source on that is that was going to happen regardless of who got hired or if Stoops was fired or not. That was entirely James Franklin making a big push for him. I've heard that decision was always going to be made whether Stoops was the coach or not, and regardless of who got hired, he was going to go play for James Franklin. So just throwing that out there.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Real quick, man, your Twitter header. It is you behind Kevin Harlan and Stan Van Gundy. So when was that? And we never talked about it. So just real quick, let the people know, man.
My Twitter header? That would have been. That looks to me like that would have been in probably Milwaukee last year. It was the telecast of a basketball NCAA tournament game. Yeah. Based on the way I look in that, I believe that was Milwaukee. Well, because it could have been Milwaukee or Pittsburgh. Okay. I think that was Milwaukee.
Good stuff. So I was like, yeah, I've never seen that before. I'm like, look at getting the airtime behind the cameo with the legend Kevin Harlan and SVG, commentating about whatever they're talking about. And there's one Cole Park front and center in the background. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. Welcome, Will Stein. And here we go. So everybody follow Cole Park. Go to thecatspaws.com. All the stories are coming out. Consume all the content. Check back in with us on the episode. Subscribe, rate, leave 5 stars. Tell your friends. Appreciate everybody in the comments. Appreciate y'all hopping on here, checking us out. So keep it up. Stay with us. And we'll keep coming back. We'll keep doing these episodes. We enjoy bringing it. We enjoy your knowledge, Cole. And we'll call it a evening right here, right now, since the hire is done. Believe in Kentucky, Believe Network. For Cole Park, my name is Vinny Hardy. Go Cats. And we'll speak to Hills tomorrow. And we'll talk to everybody later on.